It's Monday, November 17th, 2025, and Ukraine just plunged occupied Donetsk into darkness. This was an image of the city last night. Blackouts in the city of Donetsk and large areas of Russian-occupied parts of Ukraine's Donetsk Oblast followed reports of a drone strike on the electricity substation late on November 16th, late last night. This is a drone bomber's image of where the drones were going from Ukraine out into Russia. And here we see Ukraine struck 500 kilovolt Veshkayama, a substation in Russia's Ulyanovsk region last night. The substation had only recently been partially restored, and now it's hit yet again. Collaborator Denis Pushilin confirmed that yesterday's Ukraine drone strikes left 500,000 subscribers without power in occupied Donetsk and regions around there. A large part of the still remains without power. So that's what the city's looking like, and it's going to continue to happen, and it's going to continue to happen deep in Russia as well. Ukraine keeps striking deep in Russia, this time hammering oil for the third time in 2 weeks, hitting other key oil refineries. So these are just what's been happening last night, and it's cumulative and it adds up. Fire broke out at the Tishkun plant in Russia's Kursk region. The factory produces zinc and chemical materials used in Russian military equipment, ammunition, and electronics. Ukraine also struck the Oriol thermal power plant again overnight, as well as the Veshkama substation and the Ulyanovsk region, and another substation near occupied Donetsk. So Donetsk and Horlivka were left without electricity. Again, the hits just keep coming, and it's going to. Now, Ukraine has a very clear and compelling strategy. If it can drive the oil refining down and drive the production out, that's going to be a big thing. Oh, by the way, let me speak to this. Yesterday, the headline was that there's no more export in the Black Sea. Hours after I posted this, and what I posted was from open source, public information, printed about what's going on. Comments were starting to flood in about, hey, Johnny Pierce just said, yes, they are refining. And then I saw articles saying, yes, they are refining. By the way, if Johnny Pierce says something, he's probably right about like tracking what's going on in the war. He does an excellent job. If you are not subscribed to ATP Geopolitics, go over there and go to ATP Geo. ATP Geo. And yeah, so there were already comments just hours after I posted that. And again, it does seem like Novorossiysk has opened up in limited quantities to export oil. So it'll be hit again, and we'll see how long that takes. Okay, Ukrainian drones struck the Zinkum plant in Kursk region. The defense contractor supplies zinc alloys and chemical materials to the Russian military. The strike disrupted 200,000 tons per year, about 10% of Russia's zinc supply chain. Here we see some other hits. The primary unit conducted another round of successful deep strike operations. Tor M1 SAM system, a command post 55K6 from the S400 SAM system, 9S18M1-3 radar from the Buck M3 complex. So there were a lot of strikes last night. Okay, let's look at what the Russians were doing to the Ukrainians last night. On the night of November 16th to 17th, Russians attacked European towns and cities with 2 Iskander and ballistic missiles, 128 Shahed, Gerba, and other strike drones. So 130 total strikes, 91 were suppressed or downed. Russia's also started using a new type of Shahed drone, Model 101, near the front lines. It carries an 8 to 9 kilogram warhead, has a range of several hundred kilometers. It uses a 4-element CRPA antenna for navigation. It was produced in Iran in 2024. Russia is likely preparing for local production of this particular model. This is like an older model, as I understand. Okay, at least 3 civilians were killed in their own homes. Overnight strikes in residential areas of Kharkiv. 10 more were wounded, among them children. This is just the kind of thing that they bring to Ukraine every night, attacking civilians and attacking energy infrastructure. Russian forces attacked energy facilities across 5 Ukrainian oblasts, forcing round-the-clock blackout schedules in most oblasts. The 17 November strikes show Russia's systemic winter infrastructure campaign continues at scale. That's right. They're going to keep going after this. This is their primary objective right now. I think that Russia has two objectives. One, to just take whatever ground it can take on the battlefield, to run a victory lap, to show for propaganda value, see what we've done, and we'll get to that in a moment, and to drive Ukraine into darkness. Russia attacked the energy at port infrastructure of Odessa. Port infrastructure in Odessa region last night. One person was injured, several civilian ships damaged, about 32,500 households are without electricity. And you see the firefighters dealing with that there. Russians have also targeted a Turkish ship, and you heard that correctly, a Turkish ship in Ukraine's Odessa area, an LNG tanker, that's liquefied natural gas tanker, with 4,000 tons of liquefied natural gas on board, and that's on fire. Hopefully the fire will be put out, because otherwise that's a huge bomb. And so the Romanian authorities across the Danube have ordered evacuation from the towns over there because of that liquefied natural gas ship being on fire. So Ukraine's affected. Turkey's affected, Romania is affected. Here, this is another article. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk announced this morning that suspected explosion yesterday on the Warsaw-Lublin route near the village of Mika, which is critical length of rail utilized by Poland and NATO to deliver aid to Ukraine, was indeed an act of sabotage targeting the security of the Polish state. So it looks like they were trying to blow up some kind of railway here. This is... Polish authorities now say it's 3 acts of sabotage on Poland's railway network. So again, if we're counting, playing at home, Ukraine, Turkey, Romania, and Poland all affected by Russia last night. Okay, let's look at the battlefield. 1,160 Russians off the battlefield, 2 tanks, 3 armored fighting vehicles, 17 artillery systems, and 72 vehicles and fuel tanks. Okay, engagements and casualties are above the 7-day average. Again, 1,160. It was like 8 something last night or the night before, and it's 1,160 today. In the Pokrovsk direction, of course, the heaviest place on the battlefield right now, 66 assaults. And we're not going to talk a lot more about Pokrovsk right now, but we'll talk about other places on the battlefield. Russian forces are attempting to complete their encirclement of Ukrainians in Pokrovsk and Mirnograd. We know that that's going on. The situation in Huliopol direction remains very serious. That's down in Zaporizhia, as Russian forces continue to advance and maintain intensified offensive operations. Ukrainian forces also report that they are successfully pushing back Russian efforts to seize Kupiansk, and these reports are generally consistent with the ISW's assessment. So it's mixed news today. In the Dobropilya-Konstanivka highway, it was briefly cut by Russian forces during their push on Dobropilya. It's been retaken by Ukraine's air assault and National Guard units. Burned vehicles now line the road. It was a key logistics route, and the area remains high risk. Of course, anything close to Russia, Russian forces is going to be high risk. The one thing that I take some comfort in is that, Russia keeps doing stuff like this. Russian soldiers fighting near Pokrovsk say that they are eating bark to avoid starvation, while they face systematic extortion, embezzlement, and violence from their commanders, who send numerous men to their deaths and routinely execute others who are deemed inconvenient. Before men go on assault missions, they are forced to leave their bank cards and PIN codes with their commander, and they find that their personal belongings have been stolen if they return alive. Men who testify against the commanders are murdered. They say that they're ordered to reset the fighters, that is to zero them out to whatever, to send them to the front to their death, is given by a commander. So that's what I take some kind of comfort in. It's weird, but that they're not going to fight effectively in those kind of conditions against Ukraine. Okay, the atrocious paradox of this war. This is Bernard Henry Levy. He talks about wars and conflicts all over the world. The atrocious paradox of this war is that the Russians have lost 1 million men since 2022 to gain 1% of Ukraine's territory. Okay, so that's from the time that they had the counteroffensive. From that point forward, that's what he's measuring against. When they shout victory for the capture of a village, there's something both derisory and abominable about it. Such quantities of men sacrificed for a village. It's monstrous humanity. and it means nothing strategically, right? So they captured some village the other day. They were, doing this propaganda thing. Look what we've done, but it was just like tiny little village, and yeah, but we see more and more of that. Meanwhile, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban claims that Ukraine has no chance of winning the war and called for continued EU support just crazy. In a podcast interview, he accused EU leaders of prolonging the conflict, which is Russian talking point, for leverage, and urged immediate talks with Russia. On the other side of this war, he's not going to be very popular if Ukraine prevails, and I think they will. During the Third Reich, about 800,000 of 80 million Germans were arrested for dissent and opposing the war. Okay, just so that's about, just to get some figures, some comparison to in Putin's Russia, about 20,000 Russians out of 145 million have been arrested for dissenting and protesting the war. 800,000 and 20,000. Remember those two figures next time anyone, including Russian liberal opposition, tells you ordinary Russians are not guilty. Russians are either morally more brainwashed than the Germans in the Third Reich, or more cowardly, or more pro-aggression, or all of the above. But yeah, you look at these numbers, 800,000 out of 80, or 20,000 out of 145 million. Yeah, there's something misfiring in Russia. All right, my friends, that's all that I have for you. Ukraine has been fighting against tyranny for 1,363 days. Wow, think about that. And in the first days, I mean, I didn't think that they were going to be in weeks, months maybe. But here we are, almost 4 years later. Thank you for your time, the likes, the shares, the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person who cares about Ukraine.